Nintendo recently showed off a cinematic trailer for a remake of Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo Switch 2, and like most other Zelda fans, I am very excited for it. I grew up playing the original Ocarina of Time, though not through legitimate means. The Ocarina of Time port for the Nintendo 3DS was the first time we had any sort of physical version of the game, and even then I didn't get it until like 2 or 3 years after its release. We have since gotten the original N64 cartridge, and I mean original. This is the first edition golden cartridge with the chanting in the fire temple and the ability to steal the fishing rod. And of course I've been very into Ocarina of Time randomizers, both playing them and watching them. While the remake of Ocarina of Time was spoiled a bit ahead of time, I'm still nonetheless very excited for it. However, we know almost nothing about the game right now. I mean, it's going to be Ocarina of Time, of course, but not in the same way we remember it. Ocarina of Time 3D had graphical upgrades and quality of life updates, but it was otherwise the same game. What we're going to get on Nintendo Switch 2 will very likely be something completely different. The same game we know and love, but with different environments, plot progression, and maybe even different items. So in terms of both celebration and anticipation, I want to go over 10 things I both want to see, fully expect, and want to avoid. We only have Nintendo's cinematic trailer to go off of, so a majority of this video will be a mix of speculations and expectations. We'll start from the bottom, going over things that I think are relatively minor to the experience to the things that I think are the most important. I haven't done these kind of speculative videos before, so if you like what you see, definitely subscribe. We are almost to the 500 subscriber mark, which is what I need to reach in order for me to monetize my channel. So let's see if we can make that happen this month. Let's go. The opening title sequence for Ocarina of Time is iconic. It shows Link riding on Epona through Hyrule Field, giving us a sense of exploration and a hint of things to come. Except, it doesn't really show what the game actually is. It's charming and gets us in the mood, but it doesn't give us an idea of what to expect from the game, which was probably a bad thing at the time considering this is the first 3D Zelda title which played very differently from its predecessors. If we wait about a minute, we'll be brought to another cutscene, this time from near the end of the game, showing Kume and Kotake attacking Naboru. We haven't even started the game yet, and we're already being spoiled on future events. But even then, we still don't really know what the game is. The remake needs to have an opening cinematic that not only gives us that same feel from before, but also does a better job of what to expect from the game itself. Something along the lines of the opening in fellow Zelda title Twilight Princess, which mixes various cutscenes together with gameplay, giving us an overview of the characters, worlds, and actions you can find in the game, all set to a powerful and unique musical overture. I'm thinking maybe Ocarina of Time's remake starts us off like normal, as we see Link riding Epona in Hyrule Field, but instead of watching a lady get killed as our introduction to the game, the title instead transitions to a compilation of cutscenes and gameplay, without spoiling anything major. But Nintendo may also go the easy route and instead just give us that tapestry overview we saw in the trailer already, which would be very underwhelming and tells us even less of the game's content if so. Ocarina of Time is a very well done game, especially for the era it was made in. But while its story, characters, visuals, and gameplay are highly praised, one point of contention most have is the menu navigation. The original 64 title had a few menus to cycle through, which, while not difficult to manage, can get a little annoying. Most players saw the menu frequently as they navigated the water temple, needing to repeatedly open the menu to equip the iron boots, just then open the menu again to unequip them later, just to open the menu again to re-equip them on a painful cycle. Ocarina of Time 3D removed this annoyance by having the iron boots and hover boots as assignable button items instead, along with easy to cycle menus on the touchscreen, but I think we can do better. The Switch 2 remake should keep the boots as button items, but it also needs to make use of the control pad. Neither the N64 Ocarina of Time nor Ocarina of Time 3D use the control pad at all, so the Switch 2 remake can use the pad to bring up specific menu functions quickly. Fan-made mods also use the control pad as a secondary item assignment option to go along with the C buttons, but I think quick menu navigation is a better option for it. Or maybe Nintendo could also include an option for the player to decide what they want to do with it, along with button mapping as a whole. Ocarina of Time 3D has 4 item equip slots, which were the X and Y buttons, along with 2 touchscreen buttons, one more than the 64's original 3 C buttons. Unless Nintendo decides to get crazy with button combinations, the Switch 2 remake can also have 4 item buttons, the X and Y buttons, as well as 2 L and R bumpers, similar to Wind Waker's button assignments. Wind Waker also gives us the option to cycle through the different arrow types as we are using them, as a press of the triggers cycle through the fire, ice, and light arrows. Neither of the previous Ocarina of Times did this, as we had to select each type of arrow individually from the menu in order to use them, so I'd love to see arrow cycling be a thing in the Switch 2 remake. Finally, let's talk about the map. It's kind of boring. Ocarina of Time has us play certain songs in order for us to warp around the map, and in all honesty, I have trouble remembering some of them. The map could also be used to fast travel, where clicking on a point where you would normally be able to warp to will allow you to just warp there. I'm not saying remove the warp songs, I still want to play the ocarina, but fast travel through a map can be used as a faster alternative. The map also displays a gold Skulltula token if you've defeated all the gold Skulltulas in the area, but it doesn't give you any hints as to how many are in the area if you're actively searching for them. I'm not just talking about the map, as nowhere in the game does any character give you any hints as to where a gold Skulltula may be hiding. The only way you'd know where they are the first time around is if you had the Nintendo Power Guide, looked up an online guide, or wandered around aimlessly until you stumbled on them. Not even the Sheikah Stone that gives you visions in Ocarina of Time gave you hints on gold Skulltulas. I'd love for a character in the game to give you hints on where the gold Skulltulas are, especially if we're getting a reimagined world where the gold Skulltulas are likely going to be moved around. Recent Zelda titles have been utilizing amiibo fairly well, and I'd like to see that continue here. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom would give you gear and weapons relating to previous links by scanning that link's amiibo, which would be really cool to see here. But we can go further. Scanning Mario's amiibo would give Link his hat, or scanning Pikachu's amiibo would give Link a lightning rod, or scanning Sora's amiibo would give Link a keyblade. How cool would that be? While the third-party characters would present some legal complications, there's nothing stopping Nintendo from going all out with using their own characters. I don't want the costumes or weapons to be anything game-breaking though. The costumes would be purely cosmetic, unless it makes sense to give them Goron or Zora tunic properties, and the weapons or items they give would have to be Zelda ones instead of doing something like giving Link Ike's Ragnail, as awesome as that would be. In regards to the Zelda-specific amiibo, I'd love to see Wolf Link return. Scanning the Wolf Link amiibo in Twilight Princess HD gave you access to a Wolf Link exclusive Cave of Ordeals challenge, and how far you get in that cave determines how much health Wolf Link would have if you scan him into Breath of the Wild. It gave us Wolf Link as a traveling companion, someone to explore with so Hyrule didn't feel so empty, and would be a nice little side thing to see happen again. Other Zelda amiibo would give us appearances or weapons similar to the Wild era of games. The Skyward Sword Link or Zelda amiibo are worth highlighting here because I can see them granting Link a whole loft wing, which we can use to fly around above Hyrule, just taking in all of the grand sights, similar to how soaring on the back of Latios and Latias works in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. It'd be pretty game-breaking if we could fly anywhere though, so maybe we could only land in places we've already explored, or keep this option behind a late-game requirement. It'd just be fun to do if for no other purpose than that. This next want is very likely not going to happen, but it would be very cool if it did. I mentioned earlier how I'm a fan of Zelda randomizers. If you don't know what a randomizer is, it shuffles the game's content around, creating new paths and experiences for classic games. I've done ones for Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, and I love watching friends and fellow streamers play them. Majin Phil, Kyle the Pug, Bastris, and Shinisan are some of my personal favorites who stream Zelda randomizers, and I encourage you to go follow them too. Links to their Twitch channels in the description below. However, randomizers are purely a fan-created thing. Nintendo is certainly aware of them, but I don't think they've done anything relating to randomizers, Zelda or otherwise. And I don't just mean randomized elements like the item drop you get from scanning amiibo, I mean full game randomization. I'd love to see Nintendo make a Zelda randomizer of their own for the Switch 2 remake, maybe as a reward for beating Ocarina of Time at least once. I don't imagine it'd be as crazy as things like randomizing the butterflies or decoupled loading zone randomization. Just the simple item and dungeon shuffles will be fine, maybe also hero or one-hit KO modes. Enough to give this game variety after we've already experienced it, and the want to keep returning to it. The original Ocarina of Time is a timeless classic, and that experience has just been heightened by fans modifying the game to give us entirely new experiences. If Nintendo wants us to keep playing the Switch 2 remake of Ocarina of Time, there needs to be a good reason to keep us going. If not the randomizer, I'd also like to see the Master Quest redone in this new light. Master Quest was a reworking of the original Ocarina of Time, initially released on the GameCube, and then again in Ocarina of Time 3D, where it changed the way the dungeons work. It was essentially a second quest mode. However, Master Quest changes were limited to just the dungeons. The main world was otherwise largely unchanged. Ocarina of Time also has many unused and leftover content, such as being able to use the medallions as items, inaccessible areas, and even obtaining the Triforce itself. Remaking Ocarina of Time gives Nintendo the perfect opportunity to revisit some of these older ideas, and perhaps repurpose them for the remake's own unique variant of Master Quest. We know this one is going to happen already. The Ocarina of Time remake is going to receive a significant graphical upgrade. Not just sharpening the visuals and giving us higher resolution graphics like the port 3DS, but a full-on complete graphical change. Not only is the resolution going to be much higher compared to the N64 original, but environmental and character graphics are getting changed as well. Just from the reveal trailer alone, we see Link has a different tunic design, possibly one he's wearing before he gets his regular green tunic, and his own home has been completely revamped. We don't know much more outside of that, and it's not clear yet if the footage we've seen was run in-engine or not. So we know we're going to get a major graphical overhaul, but what is that going to look like exactly? My favorite entry in the Zelda series that I think has the best graphics is Hyrule Warriors. No, I don't mean the ones from the Wild era, I mean the good one, the definitive edition with as much Zelda content shoved into it as possible. Visibly speaking, it's incredible. I love how the cutscenes look and the worlds blend together well. Two of these areas, Death Mountain and the Water Temple, are already based on Ocarina of Time, so we have some visual cues already. The main character trio of Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf also have my favorite design in the series. In other words, there's plenty of inspiration to pull from here. But while a majority of Ocarina of Time is bright and exciting, there are a few locations in the game that are the complete opposite. The bottom of the well and the Shadow Temple are famous for delivering a drastic change in scenery from the rest of the game. The bottom of the well is a ruined, poisonous, and haunted series of catacombs, and the Shadow Temple is marked as a dark history for Hyrule, with many rooms filled with terrifying creatures, torture chambers, and death traps. But there is one enemy that Nintendo needs to get right here, who is perhaps the creepiest boss not just in Ocarina of Time, but the series as a whole. Dead Hand. This creature is the stuff of nightmares, and now we'll get to see it again in full HD soon. Prepare for 7-year-olds playing this game to be even more traumatized than we were. I want this game to look good, to give us a realistically toned Zelda game we haven't seen since Twilight Princess. While I like the visuals of Wind Waker, Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild, Ocarina of Time needs to not have that cel-shaded glowy look. The Shadow Temple would not look right as a bright and colorful environment, and Ocarina always had a more grounded feel to it. The art style needs to complement the tone of the game, and something between Twilight Princess and Hyrule Warriors would work very well for it. The original Ocarina of Time is the 5th game in the Zelda series. There were only 4 other mainline games released at the time, and that was all the inspiration it could pull from, while also setting the standard for future titles. Nowadays, there are a total of 21 mainline Zelda titles. There is now plenty of content for this remake to refer to, but in terms of what is considered the official Zelda timeline, there are only 3 games that take place before Ocarina of Time: Skyward Sword, Minish Cap, and Four Swords. All 3 of which released after Ocarina of Time, so there was never an opportunity to refer to them. Ocarina of Time 3D did have a wall poster of Skyward Sword's Link hidden in the Gerudo Fortress as a sort of promo for the then upcoming game, but we can do much better now. Nintendo can absolutely add more references to Skyward Sword in the remake. Perhaps we can find the Sacred Grounds hidden away somewhere, where we can maybe find that Loftwing I talked about earlier. Minish Cap and Four Swords are in a bit of a legal bind, as their development was handled by Capcom, but we can maybe still see some references to the Four Sword, Eslo, and Vati hidden away as some legend tapestry or something. As for games that take place after Ocarina of Time, we can still see some references to them. The Temple of Time in Twilight Princess looks vastly different than how it does in Ocarina of Time, so Nintendo has the chance to connect the two together as it's supposedly the same building. Majora's Mask is the direct sequel to Ocarina of Time, and while I don't expect to see any mask transformations here, perhaps the mask salesman can make some offhand comment about traveling to another land soon. A Link to the Past and games after it in the timeline happen if Link is defeated during the final battle with Ganon, but there's ways to connect the two games, like setting up the history of the palaces. Unfortunately for the Wind Waker timeline, the Great Sea is so drastically different from Hyrule that I'm not sure how well Ocarina of Time can refer to it. However, there is a major confliction here in regards to the history of Hyrule that involves the Zonai race from the Wild era. We get some references to them in Breath of the Wild before we directly interact with them and their technology in Tears of the Kingdom, but none of this content is present in any other game. Tears of the Kingdom is supposed to set up Hyrule's establishment here, something Skyward Sword was already set up to do, and while there is sub-technology involved in Skyward Sword, it's not as prevalent as the Zonai technology. The Zonai as a race also did not exist in Skyward Sword. By the time Ocarina of Time happens in the timeline, none of this technology or references to the Zonai race exist. Chances are Nintendo will redo the history of Hyrule's tale as told by Zelda to include references to Skyward Sword and or the Zonai, but having 2 instances of Hyrule's creation makes the whole thing rather convoluted. We got an updated timeline in 2024, which shows Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom being completely disconnected from the rest of the timeline. They're not even connected to each other. It's totally possible that, while the games might acknowledge the previous titles in some instances, they are otherwise their own thing in a separate reality. And if that's the case, we won't see much of the Zonai technology in the Ocarina of Time remake. And I'm perfectly fine with that. Another thing the Wild era of games did was have full voiceovers for their cutscenes. Breath of the Wild, Age of Calamity, Tears of the Kingdom, and Age of Imprisonment all had characters talking during the major events of the games. The voice actors and actresses do a great job with their characters, and as the first time we really hear characters talk in the Zelda series, it was cool and fun to interact with them. Please don't do it again. Maybe it's just me, but I like taking things at my own pace and reading the text my own ways. Part of the magic of older Zelda titles is taking what little voice clips we have, if any at all, and just making up what they sound like as we go. That little laugh Zelda gives when you first talk to her? Yeah, that's what she sounds like now. I'm not saying I hate voice acting in video games, it can be done very well. The Xenoblade Chronicles is one of my favorite series because the characters are so well handled and their personalities really shine through with the incredible voice acting.
That's Dunban over there!
But for Zelda, I don't know. Again, I think the Wild games did a great job with their characters, but something about it just felt off. Maybe I'm just used to everyone only talking through text bubbles and Link just silently nodding along for the past 3 decades before Breath of the Wild happened, and so characters from Ocarina of Time just suddenly talking might be a bit jarring. We know voice acting is going to happen in some form, as the opening of the remake is fully narrated, and I'm fine with some here and there. We might get Saria yelling as she runs up to us, Zelda fully narrating her story, Darunia laughing as he dances. Actually, you know what? Give me that. I changed my mind as I was writing this. I now need full voice acting in Ocarina of Time Remake, if nothing else than to just hear Darunia dancing and laughing like an energetic Goron. We get that in Hyrule Warriors as Darunia's victory dance, and it's just so infectious that I can't help but smile every time I see it, so please bring that into Ocarina of Time Remake. If you want a concept of what voice acting in Ocarina of Time might sound like, you can check out Zelda Universe's series where they dubbed over the text in the game. I'll leave a link to that playlist in the description below. As the first 3D game in the series, Ocarina of Time showed us various enemies as large and deadly for the first time. Combat for the most part is fun against these enemies, but later games in the series have far outdone Ocarina of Time's combat mechanics. Wind Waker introduced parry attacks as a counter to enemy defenses, Skyward Sword gave us full control over how we swing a sword, and Breath of the Wild included rapid spin attacks and flurry rushes. But it's specifically Twilight Princess's combat mechanics I want to highlight here, as it's probably the most expansive moveset in the series. From the finishing blow to the helm splitter to the mortal draw, the Link in Twilight Princess is one of the most skilled Links in the series through just these combat moves alone. But it's the Hero Shade character who teaches Link these skills in the first place, and official material tells us the Hero Shade isn't just some random undead knight traveling Hyrule, he's actually the Link from Ocarina of Time, which the Link in Twilight Princess is a direct descendant of. These two Links meet up, the only time where this happens in canonical material as far as I'm aware, just for one to pass his skills down to the other. Which means the Ocarina of Time Link learns these skills himself at some point, and that's absolutely something we need to see here in the Ocarina of Time remake. Not only would Link having these skills make combat in Ocarina of Time more interesting, but it would make sense from a lore perspective. According to the Hero Shade's dialogue, he learned these skills during a time when the world forgot his heroic deeds. Twilight Princess takes place during the era where Link returns to the past at the end of Ocarina of Time, which means all the events of Ganondorf taking over the Sacred Realm and bringing Hyrule to ruin just didn't happen. From the sound of it, Link learned these skills after his adventure in Majora's Mask, once he grew up again naturally. But that doesn't mean we can't see some of these skills in Ocarina of Time's remake. The combat definitely needs improved anyway. A lot of Ocarina of Time's fighting involves waiting for the enemy to make a move so you can respond to it. With few exceptions, there's not really any ways for Link to break through enemy defenses on his own. Stalfos are notorious for having an unbreakable shield players have difficulty getting around, and Iron Knuckles will likely be improved to function more like they do in Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, which means Link needs new skills in his arsenal in order to combat these enemies. The question then becomes, how does Link learn these skills? Twilight Princess Link had Ocarina of Time Link as his mentor, but how did Ocarina of Time Link learn these skills in the first place? Unused assets in Majora's Mask shows the Great Fairies actively training Link to learn new skills, which would be interesting, but I think the best way to grant Link new skills would be through the sages. In the original game, every time you receive a medallion, you're told that the sage adds their power to yours. Except they don't. This was likely a leftover reference to when the medallions actually would give you new abilities, so let's make that actually happen. Every time Link rescues a sage, instead of just giving him the medallion and sending him on his way, the sage should grant Link a new ability in his quest. Saria teaches the ending blow, Darunia teaches the helm splitter, Ruto teaches the backslice, and so on. They'd create an enemy for Link to try the ability on, let the player try it out in the Sacred Realm for as long as they wish, and then be sent back to their adventure with a new skill in tow. That's my idea anyway. I don't really care how it happens so long as Nintendo makes it happen. Just so long as it's something cool and not just finding a scroll under a random rock somewhere. Also, I couldn't really find a way to add this to the script naturally, so I'll just tack it onto the end here. The Link in Soul Calibur 2 is specifically the one from Ocarina of Time, and he has plenty of moves there that just did not exist in his game. Many of these are pulled from Link's appearance in Super Smash Bros. Melee or previous games, such as the up and down thrust or rapid jab, along with unique moves like this spanking grab attack. Ocarina of Time Link is shown to have an expansive moveset in any game he's in, except for Ocarina of Time itself. So even from outside of the Zelda series, there's still plenty of potential skills Link could acquire. As a near lifelong Zelda fan, I've seen the series go through many different iterations. From the top-down 2D perspective of the older games, to the seafaring adventures of the Wind Waker, to the high-flying Skyward Sword, to the rupee laundering A Link Between Worlds. So I think I have enough experience to say, please Nintendo, do not turn Ocarina of Time into Breath of the Wild. As expansive as Breath of the Wild is, it's the most un-Zelda-like Zelda game in my opinion. The only familiarities were Link, Zelda, and Hyrule, but in names only. Everything felt incredibly different, from the original story it tells, to the large, mostly empty world, to the breakable weapons, to the conflicting history between Naruto and Zora. It all felt like it tried to make Zelda into something else or start the series all over again, and then Nintendo didn't really know what to do with it moving forward. Tears of the Kingdom, the game's sequel, doesn't even directly connect to it in their timeline and makes very little references to Breath of the Wild at all, as if it's trying to distance itself from it. I did like the combat though. Nintendo can bring the Flurry Rush into Ocarina of Time and I'd be fine with that. The remake of Ocarina of Time needs to feel more traditional. Breath of the Wild had a barely there story that allowed players to take on whatever dungeon they wanted and go wherever they wanted, which created an overwhelming sense of choice paralysis and lack of any real direction. Ocarina of Time is all story. There is cohesive plot throughout the game that not only keeps the player moving, but also doesn't railroad them to certain areas. While the beginning child segment can feel like a tutorial, which makes sense considering it was the first 3D Zelda and players needed to learn how that functioned, you were still able to go where you wanted to, while also knowing where it is you needed to actually go. The world opens up more once Link travels to the future, and you could even do some dungeons in whatever order you wanted, as the Fire and Water temples and the Shadow and Spirit temples were interchangeable. Breath of the Wild's iteration of Hyrule Field was a large, sprawling area with barely anything going on in it. Any secrets or locations you could find would be great distances from each other, including the enemies, as you would go for long periods of time without running into anything. And that's honestly a problem for 3D Zelda as a whole. Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, you could go a great distance in their main fields and encounter few resistances outside of protected landmarks. 2D Zeldas do not have this problem, as the world is concise enough that there's something to fight or explore at just about every turn. For Ocarina of Time specifically, its Hyrule Field is big, but it's mostly empty and it takes a while to get anywhere. For Child Link, stall children appear at night and you can find peahats lying in grass if you go out of your way to find them. For Adult Link, you only get Poes, who appear in set locations. Exploring Hyrule Field is honestly very boring. If we're supposed to feel like Hyrule is under constant threat, Ganondorf is not doing a very good job of that. I expect Hyrule Field in the remake to be even bigger, with more secrets to find, but it also needs to populate the field with resistances. In Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you can find other travelers and fighters to talk to, and some will even be Yiga ninjas in disguise, which I think was fun, so that'd be cool to bring back here. Hyrule Field needs to not feel empty. The story needs to be prevalent but not restrictive, and please do not give us breakable weapons. Aside from the giant snipe anyway. That one actually has a reason to exist. And finally, we have the last and most important point. I won't be upset if none of the other points happen so long as this one is met above all else. The remake of Ocarina of Time needs to be fun. Nintendo is remaking a game that has withstood the test of time, one that is still loved by gamers today, whether they're a Zelda fan or not, no matter when they started their Zelda adventure. A game that is currently still the highest rated game of all time on Metacritic. We're in an era of video games now where developers have the technology and resources to make games the way they initially wanted them to be. Final Fantasy VII is getting its third and final entry in its remake series, which added whole new story elements, character backgrounds, and combat mechanics that would not have been possible in the original game. Nintendo's own Star Fox got another remake of Star Fox 64, but like Final Fantasy VII, it adds additional content to help fuel the story and characters. And all of them are done with reimagined graphics and quality of life updates that makes them feel like a whole new game, even though they're still the classic adventures we know and love. There is a lot riding on this remake of Ocarina of Time, to the point where if it's not done correctly, Nintendo might just severely damage their entire Zelda fanbase. This is Shigeru Miyamoto's masterpiece of a game being remade in a new light, and he's 73 years old, which means he's in a position of wanting to deliver the best experience he can before he, well, moves on, whenever that might be. The game needs to be enjoyable, it needs to be fun to play and explore, it needs to feel like we're playing the version we saw in our heads growing up, while also delivering the same experience to newer players. It's going to be different, and drastically so, but as long as the game is fun to play, it will keep players coming back for years to come, just like the original. I am very excited for this remake, but I'm also very skeptical. It needs to feel more like Twilight Princess levels of gameplay instead of Breath of the Wild. Ocarina of Time is the highest rated Zelda game, while Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are the highest selling Zelda games. This will be a conflict of reception versus revenue, and classic gameplay versus new ideas. This will be the game older Zelda fans would love to share with their kids and show them the adventure they went on growing up. There will definitely be Breath of the Wild elements, but Ocarina of Time on the Nintendo Switch 2 needs to deliver a fun and classic experience or else divide the Zelda community. The remake of Ocarina of Time releases this year, hopefully before Christmas. It needs to sell well, it needs to play well, and I can't wait to see how it all turns out. Thank you for watching. Also, what the heck is this? This isn't Xenoblade. How do we go from this to this? What happened? Why is Xenoblade at school now? This doesn't look like Xenoblade. This looks more like a real-time Fire Emblem mixed with school life anime. I'm not really feeling this one, guys.